I did not expect death to feel like this, so sudden, so still, so strangely quiet. One moment I was aware of my body, its weight, its limitations, its exhaustion. The next moment everything fell away like a garment slipping off a shoulder. It wasn't frightening, it was freeing. It was as though the world I had always lived in was only a shadow and someone had finally turned on the true light. And in that moment, when every earthly sound faded and every earthly breath ended, I realized something: death is not the end. It is an unveiling. I became aware of a presence, not beside me or in front of me, but everywhere at once. A presence I had known my entire life but had never fully understood. And then, before I could form a thought or question, I saw him, Jesus. Not the gentle paintings, not the small images our minds sometimes reduce him to, but glory, majesty, love, an authority so overwhelming that every fear I ever carried instantly dissolved. His eyes did not merely look at me. They looked through me, into me, yet with a gentleness that made me feel more safe than I had ever felt on earth. There was no judgment in his gaze, no disappointment, no condemnation, only truth and love, pure, undefiled, unimaginable love. It was the kind of love that makes every wound suddenly make sense, every unanswered question fade, every earthly pursuit appear small. In his presence, everything became clear. He spoke my name, not loudly, but with a tone that echoed through my entire being. When Jesus speaks your name, it is not sound, it is transformation. I felt rebuilt from the inside out with just that one word. And then he said something I never expected. Something that would alter the way I understood prayer, power, and purpose forever. You had a gift, my child, a language from heaven, but you never fully understood why I gave it to you. He was speaking about tongues. Of all the things I thought Jesus might discuss with me, my life, my failures, my victories, my calling, I never imagined he would begin with tongues. Yet in that moment, in eternity's light, I saw why, on earth, speaking in tongues had always felt mysterious, sometimes confusing, often powerful, but not fully understood. I used it, but I didn't treasure it. I prayed in tongues, but I didn't realize what was truly happening when I did. I treated it as optional, supplementary, something extra for spiritual moments. But Jesus made it clear, it was never optional. You walk through battles, he said gently, that tongues were meant to win for you. You carried weights, tongues were designed to lift. You faced confusion, tongues were meant to clear. You endured storms, tongues were given to silence. I felt exposed, not by shame, but by truth. I realized how much of my life had been lived with unnecessary struggle simply because I did not recognize the weapon I had been given. In that moment, Jesus stretched out his hand, and suddenly I saw my life, scenes flashing like living memories infused with spiritual insight. I saw moments where I sat in fear, moments filled with anxiety, moments of attack, moments where darkness whispered lies, moments where decisions felt clouded, moments where grief overwhelmed me, moments where my soul felt crushed. And then he showed me above each moment, like a spiritual overlay, the gift of tongues was shimmering, waiting, available, unactivated. And he said, this language was never meant to be understood by your mind, but recognized by your spirit. It is not for earthly expression. It is for heavenly access. This gift is how I allowed your spirit to pray beyond your understanding, break what you could not see, and rise above what you could not handle. His words were soft but filled with weight. I realized that tongues was not simply a spiritual practice, it was a divine strategy. Tongues, he continued, is the only language the enemy cannot decode, cannot interfere with, cannot weaken, and cannot manipulate. When you prayed in tongues, every word bypassed your doubt, bypassed your fears, bypassed your confusion, and entered directly into the courts of heaven. I felt something like regret, but he immediately removed it with his presence. Do not grieve what you did not know, Jesus said. Rejoice in what you can now tell others. This gift was never meant to be hidden. Teach them what I am telling you now. And then he opened what felt like layers of understanding all at once, like heaven's library unfolding before me. I saw that speaking in tongues was not emotional overflow, not spiritual noise, not a ritual, not a random utterance. It was a coded conversation between heaven and earth. It was the Spirit of God using my spirit to speak mysteries, wisdom, strategies, and power into my life. It is a language of victory, Jesus said, a language for the weary, a language for the broken, a language for the confused, a language for those who do not have the words, a language for those fighting battles they cannot articulate, a language for those walking through shadows they cannot explain. And then he said something that shook me deeply. Tongues is the only prayer you pray that is never weakened by your humanity. Every other prayer we pray passes through the filter of our emotions, our beliefs, our wounds, our doubts, our limited understanding. But tongues bypasses it all. It is the Spirit praying the perfect will of God, even when we are unaware of what we need most. When you prayed in tongues, Jesus revealed, angels were dispatched, chains were broken, attacks were reversed, doors were opened, healing was released. But you didn't always feel it, and that made you underestimate it. In that moment, I saw scenes on earth where I prayed in tongues for only a minute, quick, rushed, distracted. Yet in the spirit realm, those 1-minute prayers had set entire battles into motion. I saw angels move at the sound of those prayers. I saw darkness tremble. I saw confusion scatter. I saw situations shift, all from words I did not mentally understand. Then Jesus said something that felt like a gentle correction wrapped in love. You judge the power of tongues by how it made you feel. But tongues is not about feeling, it is about impact. We often wait for a feeling to confirm something spiritual is happening, but heaven is not confined to human sensation. Tongues is powerful whether you feel anything or not. You saw tongues as a moment, he said, but I gave it as a lifestyle. You used it for relief, I meant it for dominion. You used it for comfort, I meant it for conquest. His words went deep into the core of me. I realized that every time I prayed in tongues, heaven moved even if my emotions did not. Every time I activated the gift, chains broke whether I sensed it or not. Tongues, Jesus continued, is the language of alignment. When you speak it, your spirit aligns with my spirit. Your thoughts align with my thoughts. Your desires align with my will. I saw how many decisions in my life were made based on emotion, pressure, or fear. Then he showed me how differently those moments could have been if I had prayed in tongues first. Tongues clears spiritual fog. It silences noise. It sorts what is divine from what is deceptive. It pulls you into God's timing, God's direction, God's wisdom. Tongues is not for the spiritually elite, Jesus said. It is for every believer who wants to walk in victory. It is not a gift of superiority, it is a gift of survival. Then he showed me believers on earth, many discouraged, many spiritually dry, many confused, many overwhelmed. And I saw a common thread among them. Their prayer life was limited to what their minds could articulate. You were never meant to fight spiritual battles with human language alone, Jesus said. When you pray only from your mind, your words carry the weight of your mind. But when you pray from your spirit, your words carry the weight of heaven. My heart trembled at the truth. Tongues is heaven's breath through your earthly body, he said. It is the way I fight for you from within you. Then everything changed. Suddenly, he brought me back to one particular moment from my life. I was sitting alone, overwhelmed, anxious, frustrated. I had prayed in tongues for less than 30 seconds. Because I felt nothing, I stopped because my emotions told me nothing was happening. But in this heavenly view, I saw what had actually occurred. In the spirit realm, those 30 seconds had pushed back a massive cloud of darkness heading toward my mind. It had broken an attack. It had caused something demonic to flee, and I had no idea. Never measure spiritual battles with natural senses, Jesus said. Tongues changes things even when you feel nothing. Then he said something even deeper. Tongues is not only a weapon, it is a bridge. It connects you to realms you cannot see, wisdom you cannot access, and strength you cannot generate. I understood then why Paul said he thanked God he spoke in tongues more than all. He was not boasting. He was revealing the secret behind his resilience, revelation, endurance, and spiritual power. Jesus looked at me again, and his voice carried a gentle urgency. Tell them, he said, tell my people that tongues is not noise, it is strategy, It is revelation. It is breakthrough. It is protection. It is alignment. It is access. He paused, and his next words pierced me. And tell them the enemy's greatest goal is not to stop their worship, their preaching, or their serving. It is to stop their tongues. Because he knows what they do not know. When a believer speaks in tongues, hell loses grip. I felt this truth ripple through the atmosphere of heaven. Tongues terrifies darkness. It weakens every demonic plan. It disrupts every spiritual attack. It opens doors the enemy tried to close. It strengthens the believer's inner man with supernatural resilience. Jesus continued, tongues awakens dormant gifts, unlocks hidden purposes, and ignites spiritual fire. I saw believers who had gifts inside them that had never been activated simply because tongues had never been consistently practiced. Tongues stirs the spirit the way wind stirs a flame. Tongues fan spiritual passion. It awakens sleeping callings. Then he revealed something beautiful. Tongues builds a sanctuary inside you, a place where fear cannot enter, a place where doubt loses voice, a place where anxiety has no authority. This sanctuary is what Jude meant when he said, build yourselves up on your most holy faith, praying in the Holy Spirit. It is spiritual construction, brick by brick, word by word, mystery by mystery. And then Jesus said something that felt like pure revelation. Tongues is the only language on earth that did not originate from earth. It originated in heaven. It carries heaven's sound, heaven's mind, heaven's authority. I felt overwhelmed with awe. Then he added, when you speak it, heaven recognizes the sound as its own. I understood then why tongues feels different, because it is different. It is not learned, it is given. It is not understood by the mind. It is understood by God alone, and it is not controlled by emotion. It is powered by the Spirit. Then Jesus reached out his hand, and a warmth flowed through me. Your time is not over, he said. You will return, but when you do, tell every believer who will listen. Teach them what tongues truly is, and tell them that if they desire to live with peace, clarity, and power, they must use the language I placed inside them. He looked at me with eyes of eternal love. This gift changes everything if they will only use it. And with those words, I felt myself pulled back, like being lifted by a force I could not describe. The light dimmed. The atmosphere shifted. My spirit descended. Suddenly I gasped, back in my body, back in the limitations of flesh, back in the realm of time. But I returned with revelation burning inside me, revelation I was commanded to share. So here is the message. Tongues is not noise. It is not emotional overflow. It is not optional. It is not extra. It is heaven's strategy placed inside human vessels. It is the Spirit praying through you with perfect precision, perfect timing, and perfect power. It defeats battles you cannot see. It dismantles fear you cannot overcome alone. It opens doors you cannot unlock with your own understanding. It reveals what your mind cannot perceive. It strengthens what the world tries to break. It aligns you with God when everything around you pulls you in different directions. It releases wisdom, clarity, and direction that human language cannot hold. It builds you. It frees you. It transforms you. And it connects you to Jesus in a way nothing else can. When Jesus told me that tongues was one of the most misunderstood gifts in the church, I finally understood why the enemy fights it so viciously. If believers ever grasped its true power, the gates of hell would shake under the weight of their prayers. So here I stand, not the same person who left my body, not the same believer who once underestimated heaven's language. I returned with a mission to tell you what Jesus told me. Do not wait for a feeling. Do not judge it with your mind. Do not let it lie dormant. Do not treat it as optional. Do not let intimidation silence it. Speak it, use it, pray it, activate it, even if it feels small, even if it feels simple, even if it feels unclear, even if you don't feel anything. Because in the Spirit, something massive is happening every single time. Tongues is heaven speaking through you. Tongues is Jesus fighting for you. Tongues is the Spirit strengthening you. Tongues is the Father revealing His will in mysteries. This gift changed everything for me. And if you let it, it will change everything for you too. The experience revealed that life is far more spiritual than physical, far more eternal than temporary, and that so much of what we dismiss on earth as small, ordinary, or insignificant carries unimaginable weight in the realm we cannot yet see. I understood, in a single moment beyond the veil, that every spiritual gift we take lightly is playing a role far greater than our natural minds ever realize, especially the gift of tongues, a divine weapon and heavenly language that many believers overlook, underestimate, or misunderstand. What appears simple on earth echoes with power in heaven, and the very gift we treat as optional is often the key to breakthroughs, protection, wisdom, and victory that God always intended for us to walk in. The encounter with Jesus made it unmistakably clear that speaking in tongues was never meant to be an emotional display or a spiritual performance. It was a doorway into realms human strength could never enter. In His presence, I understood that tongues is a sacred instrument designed to unlock divine strength when our own strength fails, to reveal hidden wisdom when our minds are overwhelmed, and to bring spiritual clarity when life feels clouded, confusing, or heavy. It is a channel of supernatural intimacy, a way for the believer to commune with God beyond the limits of language, culture, intellect, or understanding. Tongues carries us into levels of power, discernment, and divine connection that no amount of human effort, discipline, or intellect can ever achieve, because it is the Spirit Himself praying, lifting, guiding, and strengthening us from within. The message showed that tongues is not just a gift, it is a heaven-given language crafted by God Himself to bring the believer into perfect alignment with His Spirit. It became clear that this language was designed to steady the heart when fear rises, to silence the whispers of doubt that the enemy plants, and to wage war against invisible battles we do not even realize are unfolding around us. In this divine language, heaven fights for us, strengthens us, and surrounds us with supernatural protection. Tongues unlocks peace that circumstances cannot shake, awakens purpose buried beneath years of struggle, and releases a flow of spiritual power that nothing else in the Christian life can replicate. It is God's way of equipping His people to live victorious, clear-minded, and deeply connected to His presence in every season and every storm.